Hi, my name is Wendy Chun-Hoon. I direct the Women's Bureau at the United States Department of Labor. The gender wage gap and the factors that contribute to it cost women workers billions of dollars annually. Each year, the Women's Bureau and grassroots organizations across the country mark Equal Pay Day to recognize the fact that it takes the average woman a full year plus several months into the next year to get paid the same amount the average man got paid in the previous year. In 2020, women working full-time year-round were paid on average 83% of what their male counterparts were paid. The gender wage gap is even more alarming for Black and Hispanic women, who were paid 64 cents and 57 cents respectively to the dollar white non-Hispanic men were paid. There are several factors that contribute to the persistent gender wage gap. One key factor is occupational segregation, meaning the concentration of women in certain female-dominated jobs and men into male-dominated jobs. The Women's Bureau has just released a report explaining why working women, especially women of color, were most impacted during the COVID-19 pandemic, and occupational segregation was key. In 2020, women were overrepresented in occupations and industries with the greatest job losses. Occupational segregation contributes to the gender and racial wage gap and has significant costs for women and families and our economy. Occupational segregation cost Black women an estimated $39.3 billion and Hispanic women an estimated $46.7 billion in lower wages compared to white men in 2019. Occupational segregation also perpetuates the gender gap in that traditionally female jobs tend to be devalued. Research shows that jobs with higher percentages of women pay lower wages on average than similar male-dominant occupations, and this cannot be explained away by the characteristics of the workers or the requirements of these jobs. In other words, women's labor is so devalued that when women enter an occupation in large numbers, wages for that occupation go down. The fact that women are typically responsible for caregiving can also play a role in the gender wage gap. Taking time out of the workforce to care for family, as so many did during the pandemic, disrupts earnings, and re-entering the workforce after such a break often results in an earnings penalty, all of which adds up over a woman's lifetime to impact her economic security in retirement. Moreover, women's lower wages can be anchors that continue to weigh them down even while they gain new skills and move into progressively more responsible jobs. Despite the EEOC's caution to employers about reliance on prior salary history as a discriminatory wage practice that should not be used to solely justify pay differences between men and women, employers often set wages based on a worker's previous earnings, and this often disadvantages women who are particularly likely to have a history of being paid undervalued and sometimes very low wages. The Biden-Harris administration and the Department of Labor are committed to addressing the many factors that contribute to the gender wage gap, including tackling occupational segregation. The administration is working to create a more equitable economy where every worker has the opportunity to best utilize their interests and abilities by supporting women to enter male-dominated fields, by addressing hostile working climates that deter or drive women out of higher paying occupations that are still considered non-traditional for women, by building a better care infrastructure, by raising wages and job quality, especially in women-dominated fields, and by ensuring gender and racial equity in newly created jobs. The pandemic upended our lives in ways too numerous to quantify, but the economic losses experienced by women of color could not be more clear. Now we have an opportunity to learn from this moment and to move forward in a way that makes a real difference for women's economic futures and the quality of lives for families across this great nation. Thank you for all you're doing to work with the Women's Bureau to make a difference for women and families.